to the show.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats Podcast. And thanks for being here. Love you all. I don't know why I started that way, but that's how I'm doing today. So my guest today is, I've mentioned this young man on the podcast before, probably not by name, but I always tell the story about my first trial class and me starting Jujitsu, and then my sticking around because this young man, even though he was showing me the ropes and we were kind of rolling a little bit, he's always beating me up. And my purpose of staying in jiu-jitsu is always like, look, I'm going to beat this kid one day. Still haven't beaten him. You know what? Let's just face it. He's a prodigy. He's a master at this. So my guest today is good friend, Michael Mouth Garlington. How you doing, buddy? What's going on?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Good. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you on. Finally, as much as I reference you on here, it's nice to now be able to sit down and talk with you. And just when you reached out to me the other day, at first I was like, is this a spam bot? I was gonna mess with you. I was like, hey man, what's going on? I was like, oh, I'm all right. You? And then when you started just general conversation, I was like, oh, it's not a bot, because I was ready. So it was just good hearing from you. And then, here we are, decided we're going to get into the podcast. And from what I understand, you explained you're going to be starting your own pretty soon. So congrats on that and good luck with everything. You want to got any details about that so far?
Yeah, so it's called Stop Hitting Yourself podcast. It's me and my best friend Greg. We've always wanted to do something entertainment, we think we're funny, and so we wanted to go out, start. And he's been doing podcast things for a while now, and we're hoping to have the first episode out in May. So check us out on YouTube. Stop Hitting Yourself podcast. Keep your eyes open for release dates.
Good. All right. I think that's always a fun way to kind of get your podcast started, especially with friends, because it's like, I think when we're all sitting with our friends, we're cracking ourselves up.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what? We should probably do something with this. So it's a good start. So, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, we'll talk about jiu-jitsu here. I want to really kind of talk to you about that, your journey, growing up with it, and then also wrestling. You state champ, right? You won
my senior year.
Nice. So it will, want to kind of go into that a little bit, and then, like I said, just general conversation. We're going to let this conversation go where it goes. Yeah. So first thing I want to ask you, as it pertains to jiu-jitsu, especially, what led you to doing jiu-jitsu?
Well, it started off as I was one of those kids that did every single sport. I did 5 sports a year. I would do swim, basketball, soccer season, trying to lacrosse, baseball, football, and I was always the tiniest kid for my age. Like kids around my size were 2 years younger than me. I was a skin and bones, and I was just finished football season actually, and I was like a third string D lineman. I got my 10 plays in every single game, and that was it. I didn't really like it. And one day, me and my dad were actually just watching TV, and I saw it was I forget who the fighter was. I want to say it was John Jones. I saw him like spinning back fist someone, and I was like, I want to do this. And my dad was like, all right, just don't tell your mom. And so he wanted to do his own research, and it ended up to find a local jiu-jitsu gym. And ever since then, I bought in immediately. I went from training twice a week doing the kids class to, I think after my first 4 months, I flew out to California when I was 12 to go do the Pan Am kids tournament. And then ever since then, I was training 5, 6, 7 days a week. I just fell in love with it.
Nice. So when I came about, I think I started in 2015.
Yeah, I think I was 15 when you started.
Okay. All right.
So I was doing about 4 years before that.
Oh, nice. So when you started going out to competition? You say you started that pretty early on, like.
Yeah, I actually don't remember how it exactly happened. After I think it was my second month, I went to a Grappler's Quest in New Jersey, and I went out there and I got my ass whooped. I was in a rear naked choke for 3 minutes straight, and luckily this kid was over my chin, but it was not pleasant. I remember my parents hated it because they just saw their little kid getting choked out by some other kid and all that. And I was the only kid there, and it was two of our coaches were also competing. And ever since then, I lost both in no gi, and then I got third in gi, and I fell in love with it. The competition aspect of it was awesome. I loved like going and learning moves, and then like putting them into use, and like seeing the results of hard work go in. And so ever since that first Grappler's Quest, I was on a competition like addiction where I went to like a Naga the month after, and then my coach is like, we're going to Pan Kids. And somehow, luckily, my parents were able to get me out there. And I went and I was in like the kids' gray belt division. I got like judo tossed and bow and arrow choked the first 30 seconds. I had one match and I was done. And so I get to enjoy a trip to California though. And then, but I was like, okay, well, next year I'm coming back to this. And that was always the goal, was go out to California and win as a kid all the way up until, and then getting to the juvenile, I was like, okay, now we're going to go win. So it just kind of kept getting more and more addicting as I went on.
All right. So there was like a gradual progression as, you go in, you get this result, not exactly what I'm looking for, but you went back to the drawing board and came back.
Yeah, I don't think I won a single tournament until about 6 months in. And I started competing on my second month. I just liked it. I enjoyed it. I would win matches, but I don't think I won a tournament for the longest time. And then one day, it was actually after my first summer camp, is because I was at the gym all day. We would do like 3 practice sessions, and I was a kid, so I wouldn't get tired. And that's when it started to click, because I was just drilling moves, and it was just becoming muscle memory instead of having to think about it.
I guess that's one way of looking at it too. I never thought about it as, like I said, as a kid, you just got endless energy. So,
yeah,
just keep going. But so with, your age though too, and growing up for you, because I know for me, there are times where I'll say, okay, I'll drill a move forever and ever, but then the focus becomes my question. So, did you ever have any issue with staying focused or getting distracted?
not necessarily. I had a lot of like really good friends in the gym. As usually around like the teenage years, people start getting distracted, stop coming in, worrying about friends and all that stuff. And I was usually pretty good about working around that, where I was still in the gym for about 6 days a week. And then it wasn't until about my junior year of high school is when I stopped like competing heavily in jiu-jitsu because of wrestling.
So that was going to be, kind of my next question as well, as when did wrestling start for you?
So interesting enough, I was doing private lessons. I was working with one of the younger kids at the gym, and his dad was a dean of a private school. And he was like, do you wrestle at all? Because his kid was actually there longer than I was, but he was just much smaller. And I used to give him like tips and tricks and roll around with him. And he was like, do you wrestle? He's like, you have to, right? If you're doing grappling. I was like, I actually have never wrestled a day in my life. He was like, well, you should. That's how, he's like, they don't give out scholarships for jiu-jitsu. And then so I talked to my parents. And so my 8th grade year, so I was 12, 13, I started wrestling. Just like the junior, like the Naval Academy Club. And I was okay at it, and jiu-jitsu was still, I just wanted to pull guard the whole entire time. That's all I wanted to do. But, and then so freshman year, I went to a private high school and wrestled, and I loved it there, loved my coaches, and then ended up missing my friends, missing jiu-jitsu. I came back, and sophomore year, went back to public school, and then did a full year of competing jiu-jitsu again. And then junior year, a bunch of like my close childhood friends all wrestled at my public high school, Broadneck, and they were like, you got to come try out. It's like, if you don't like it, you can quit, but you got to come try out at least. I tried out, and I was enjoying myself, so I was trying to split the time. And then it was right around when I got on varsity, and I lost a match. That was the click of like, okay, I'm going to go all wrestling because I'm not losing any more matches. And that's when the switch came to. And then after junior year summer, I did off-season wrestling, and that kind of like took place of jiu-jitsu for the time being. And then senior year, I started getting like scholarship offers and things like that, and like colleges asked me to come tour. And so then it was kind of hard to like, oh well, I'm getting offered education for this, so that's how it kind of switched from jiu-jitsu to wrestling.
I remember, seeing you there all the time, and then just kind of just not seeing you. That was always, it was like, oh no, I hope he's not, kind of going, but then eventually, you start popping back in. It's like, oh, he's wrestling. Okay, never mind. I get it now. And, I think that's for me, at least, when it kind of clicked like, oh, wait a minute, these two things are kind of interconnected. It's not one or the other, how so many people try to frame it on social media. It's like either you wrestle, or you do jiu-jitsu. It's not both.
I actually think most people say like, oh, wrestling complements jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu doesn't really complement wrestling. And I think that's complete nonsense. And just in the fact of the learning aspect of like, there's a curve of like, okay, you have to find the balance of not being too comfortable on your back. But there's a lot of times where that saves, especially like high school and like younger kids, being comfortable on your back. Because a lot of times kids, that's how they get pinned, is they panic and they start flailing around trying to get off. Meanwhile, I'll get someone in like a back take situation and I'm comfortable as can be because I've done it for 10 years. And so things like that were very helpful. And then when going back into jiu-jitsu and training, wrestling was definitely more beneficial there. And just actually like the balance aspect and the sturdiness, and then just being confident while standing up in any match that I was like, I can probably out wrestle this person in front of me.
I think that's where it really plays in, is having that comfort and having the confidence of knowing, look, I know what I know. And what I know is I can beat this guy.
Yeah, it actually changed my whole entire jiu-jitsu game. From when I started wrestling, I was a guard pooler. I wouldn't even think about doing takedowns, gi, no gi, whatever it was. And as soon as I started getting serious in the wrestling, I was all takedowns and guard passing. And it really improved my guard passing 100%. And I don't think it really had a downfall on my guard or any of my jiu-jitsu movements that I needed. But it just almost made me want to be on top and guard pass and have that pressure, because that's kind of how wrestling is, that fast pace, in your face wrestling.
Since winning, states in your senior year, have you done any jiu-jitsu competitions, or has it just kind of still been, because from that point, you got college coming up following that.
Yeah.
So has it just been from that point, just kind of as you mess with jiu-jitsu, just kind of keeping, the tools sharp and not necessarily competing, or have you done any competitions since?
Well, so I've only done one, and that was it was still my senior year of high school, and I just won states, and I was just kind of itching for competition, and a bunch of my friends were making fun of me, saying I lost it and all that, and they were trying to get on my skin. And I was like, all right, fine. So I went to like a local Newbury tournament here, and no, it was good fight. It was good fight. It was submission only, and so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go into my division. I was like, I think I still got it. I think I can shake the rust off in a couple matches, and it was definitely rusty. But I went out and I won the tournament. But it was rough compared to how I used to be training full time, to seeing like, wow, you never think there's actually going to be rust until you try it out, of taking a break and going back and doing it. But no, since then, just on and off training. I was at Salisbury University, so there's a couple of cool gyms in Ocean City and in Salisbury. I would stop at time to time. And then now I'm back home. I actually I was supposed to go today, but I had to get back here to do this from work. But tomorrow I'm going in to re-sign my membership for the gym. So I'll be back in full time.
Good. And yeah, when you and I were messaging, you had mentioned that you're thinking about, coming back and getting back on the mat. So it's good. I'm glad to hear that. It's after COVID, I know for myself, COVID slowed things down for me.
Yeah.
I was like full clip just there. I was at the gym to a point where my wife would tell me, hey, so you should probably, I don't know, come home some nights for dinner. Your kid misses you.
Yeah.
COVID hits and then everything slows down, but then it was tough for me to pick back up on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, being there now, a lot of new faces, a lot of different faces. So, when you said you're coming back, it's like, oh, that'd be cool. Just to, see some familiarity there,
Yeah.
just the comfort. Not that there's, not comfort there now. It's just, when you see old faces pop back in, it's like, oh my goodness, like where have you been?
No,
So
I've actually had a couple like coaches and old teammates reach out to me like, "Hey, you just not really interested anymore." I've always been super like I've never not had a Flow grappling account. I've always had a Flow. I watch Pan's World. I watch the live streams. I watch highlights. I watch big matches on Fight to Win. I especially follow my teammates. I love watching them succeed and do well. And so, like, I've always been a student of the sport. Still am. I still watch on. If you go on my YouTube feed, it's all jiu-jitsu and wrestling and grappling videos and things like that. I've always found it super interesting. So now that like I'm at a state where I'm done school, I can actually pay for my own membership and pay for my own tournaments and things like that. I'm super excited to get like back into the training and back into my own groove.
and I was going to ask you that too. Is like, have you still been kind of keeping up on things, watching? I remember uh, before we moved gyms, before we left down off in Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you came in, you were working leg locks with us in the no-gi class and teaching us the Musumeki, transitions with like ankle locks and stuff. So I felt like at least at that point, it's like, okay, he's still, got his hands in jiu-jitsu in some capacity. But then that was ages ago. So, I was wondering, like, is he still, watching? Does he still study? Or is it just kind of like, you know what? It's like riding a bike. I'm gonna hop back out there and we'll just see where it goes. So
Oh no, I definitely. I mean, you can ask my brother the amount of times I've came out of his room like, "Hey, get on the ground. I want to try something." And the first time I saw one of the Rotola brothers do a buggy choke. I was like, I need to try this out. And so I went and did that, and like things like that. I still love the sport, and I've always been, even since I was like, my parents just thought I was weird when I was 12 years old. I was watching adults. I was watching Cobrinha and Rafa Mendes compete against each other. Like I've always just been addicted to the game. I thought it's so cool how these black belts are doing these insane things like so fastly. And so, yeah, I've never fallen off of watching it. And so now I'm excited to actually get back and do it.
good. I'll be happy to see you back out there on the mat and can't wait to just, you'll more than likely be in the later class. So I'm trying to get back to that class. I think I'm going to start bringing my daughter and just having her sit um, off to the side until
Yeah.
it's time for us to go. But I'll be happy to be out there with you and just cross paths again. At the very least, as I'm leaving and you guys are coming in, something. It's just, like I said, it's good to see familiar faces and old friends.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I stopped in, I think it was like 2 weeks ago just to go train and talk about memberships and things like that, getting back into it. And I saw so many old faces, old coaches, and it was awesome. It was like just all the memories rushing back.
It's weird thinking about, at least for me, with the kids program, because again, you're a grown man now, but I still think like the kids program, I think you. I'm like, wait a minute, those kids that are in the kids program, those are kids. This guy's a grown up.
Yeah, it was weird. I stopped in a little earlier to see a kids class when I went in the train, and I didn't recognize a single one of the kids because they all grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids I was coaching were in the adult class, and I was rolling with them, and they were my size, and I was like, "What the hell is happening?" I was like, "This is what people would say to me back when I was younger. Like, dude, you're my size now." And I was like, okay, whatever. Now I'm like, oh my god, these 13-year-olds are my size, and they were back when they were 10-year-olds. I was teaching them.
Yeah, but that's the kind of the progression of it, though, especially when you have instructors that they can explain the game in a way that makes them want to stick with it, makes them fall in love with it, and then you see them years later and they're still doing it. There's something very rewarding about that, I think. So I mean, your students that you're teaching back when they're 10, now here they are 13, 14 years old. There's something to that. So
Yeah,
I'm sure they're
I
glad
love
to
I
see
love
you.
to see it though. I love to see them. I hope when I start coming back in, they're able to kick my ass. So then I have something. So then I have a reason where I can't not leave the gym until I beat them.
Yeah, I mean, look, it worked for me. That was my sign up. Like I went in there, rolling with it. Like, okay, cool. He's showing me an Oompa sweep. All right, that's pretty cool. And then there was I can't remember. All I know is you had my back, and I was just like, I don't like this. Like, like I can't move this kid off my back. Because you never think about it. We have like your little cousins giving a piggyback ride or something, or they jump on your back or something. You can just fling them off. It's like now you have someone on your back that knows how to stay
Yeah.
there. So, but all the same, always just happy, to interact with you. So with coming back and getting onto the mats and getting reacclimated, I know you're excited and everything. Competition season is in full swing with all the IBJJF tournaments going on. How soon do you think before you get back out there?
Well, that's something I was talking to some of the coaches about, and that was one of my reservations. Was I work a full time job Monday through Friday, and I'm paying my own way now, and things like back when. Luckily, as a kid, I had the amazing support of my parents, who no matter what, if I needed to go where I wanted to go to a tournament, they found a way to make it happen, which was awesome. But I as a 20-year-old don't have that aspect of being able to just go out to California on a whim. But I do want to get back in competition. I would personally, I'm a big believer in don't go out and go somewhere unless you're confident in yourself. And I would not expect myself to go out to a blue belt level competition like somewhere like Pans or Worlds and be at the same level because of the rust and things like that and my serious training schedule that I used to have. I know what it takes to succeed at those levels. So I do want to hop back into some like local tournaments, some Nagas maybe, and new breeds and things like that. But for anything like IBJJF, that would probably be a next year conversation.
Okay, fair enough. Just wondered because there are some I would call crazy people. Maybe they're not crazy. Maybe they're just supremely like overconfident. They're just like, oh no, I'll probably hop to the next one. Like, oh, okay, cool. Well,
No, as a thing that I've noticed as still watching the game is every single year the level of each belt gets higher.
mm-hmm.
Of like the back then, if you see the blue belts now, you would have thought they were purple or brown belts back 10 years ago. The way they move and the way they just had that, because there's blue belts that this is their life still, even though they just committed to it. They train 7 days a week, twice a day, things like that. Now I know I have teammates that do it, and so things like that. Like I'm you got to be realistic to see yourself at some point where I think I can go and succeed in some local level tournaments and regional level tournaments possibly, but I don't want to put myself on the big scheme of going out and flying somewhere or travel doing a long distance unless I'm confident I'm gonna go out there and compete at my best capability.
Sure, absolutely. And it's interesting that you point out, as the game is changing, just even the last couple of years, we've sat back and watch older, well, just like the old UFCs where Hoist Gracie, came onto the scene in '93 and stuff like that, and we're watching his jiu-jitsu, and this is different because it's MMA jiu-jitsu. We're just watching certain chokes and just certain movements, and Mark and I were looking at it like, wow, that's like that was very elementary,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't like he did something so simple and made him look silly. It was like it was something simple. As simple as like a neon belly. It was like, oh well, he doesn't. What we're used to these days with a neon belly. It's like, oh, he's doing it much different then. And then as you kind of look along as the years go on, you see, okay, now that's changed and they're still doing it this way, whereas now the game is taken off in another direction. And that's not even just from that point up to, let's say, 2000 and 2000 up to 2010, but even just being 2022 from 2020, things have just changed so drastically that like the buggy choke is just kind of the new hot move on the scene the last, I want to say, year and a half, maybe
Yeah.
2 years. And everywhere like you're looking, you're seeing buggy choke, left and right. until it was a couple weeks ago at ADCC. Somebody went for a buggy choke and got slammed out of it. So people are probably now thinking, all right.
Yeah.
And now we need to find a new one. So
The thing is about that is it's just the level of innovation is getting insane with these people. Back, if you look 10, 15 years ago at jiu-jitsu footage, everyone's doing half guard, butterfly guard. They're doing closed guard. They're doing strong fundamental jiu-jitsu, which is there's nothing wrong with whatsoever.
No.
But you see innovation, and also curiosity of like when I see a move that I had no idea what it was, I would want to look it up. Like I used to, my favorite to watch as a kid, the kids were the Mendez brothers and the Michale brothers.
Yep.
I had every single DVD. I've watched every single instructional video they've ever put out. And like somewhere in my room, I definitely still have the Michale brothers How to Berimbolo DVD. And I literally sat down and I had a little mat in our basement back in the day, and with my brother on the TV there, and I was like, "You're my dummy for the next hour," and I would just drill that. And then I'd go into the gym and ask the competition purple and black belt and brown belts and ask them to critique me and help me. And that's back when I was a yellow belt. I think it was 13, 12 maybe at the time. And like, there's kids that are even hungrier than that nowadays who, like, when I walked in the gym 2 weeks ago, there was a yellow belt he berimboloed me into a crab ride. And I was like, you are 12 years old. This is insane. I learned this when I was like 16. And so kids are getting higher level at a younger age. So it's when they hit adults, they're already animals.
Yeah, there was I want to say it had been 2019 because we moved to the new gym in 2019, and I was helping with the belt test for one of the kids. I think he was in 8th grade because I remember we sat with him a couple days later. He's in 8th grade, and during the belt test, he gets me down, and he went for a Peruvian necktie, and the timer went off before he could sink it in, but there was one part of me was kind of like, how dare you? But then the other part was like, wow, like this kid, he's learning stuff. He's watching video. So, the availability for the kids also, to, get video instructional stuff like that is definitely helping, them get to a higher level at a younger age, especially, if they really are into it and they love it. And this young man, he's still at the gym. I haven't crossed paths with him since. And it's like, I'm still a little shook. I don't have the same feeling that I had with you, where it's like, I'm going to get that kid. And when he went for that, I was a little nervous because I'm like, what else does he know? Like, I got to watch him. And I haven't been near him enough to be able to kind of spy on him. But I was really shocked by it. But also at the same time, impressed because, like I said, you got these kids, watching video. I don't know if it was you or Magnus. Someone had said, I believe one of you, at bedtime, it's like it's time to go to bed. Your parents throw you to bed, and they come in the room, and you're under your sheet watching YouTube videos of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, my parents used to take my phone. So I would do that. I would sneak on like my iPad or my phone and watch footage. My favorite, I would always be watching, like, I could probably, if you told me like the year, I could probably break down a Cobrinha Hoffa Mendes final. Like, those are my two favorite guys to watch back in the day. So like those are my dad used to get so mad at me. He was like, dude, it's 1 a.m. You gotta go to sleep. You have school in the morning.
I mean, on one note, he's not wrong, but on another note, is when you love something and you're just so curious about it, it's hard to turn that switch off. So I get it completely. With your grappling style, when you're in full swing, like, can you describe that to me, like your style of grappling back then?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing was just to be unpredictable. Especially, I think I was at like my peak like performance. It was my sophomore year of high school. I was competing in the juveniles, and that's when I had 2 years of wrestling under my belt. So I was comfortable on the feet if I needed to do takedowns, things like that. And I was comfortable with my guard passing, but I was mainly a guard player, and mostly lasso and spider guard. with influence to my teammates that were receiving Jameel Hill and people like that who were super into the entanglement and that like tying up lapels and sleeves and all these tricky things. I used to find that so cool. Just like me, sometimes when I go there for a Saturday practice, I would let him just drill on, and he would just drill on me and just like, what is it if I do this? And he would just play around with stuff. I found it so interesting just to watch him do that and to do it with him. And so I always love that kind of stuff, just trying to tangle everyone up and things like that. But I was definitely a guard player, and I would my two main, I was either doing collar sleeve guard or I was doing some sort of lasso guard as well.
And when you would transition to wrestling, I know we kind of talked on it, I guess, a little briefly, but with your jiu-jitsu game translating to wrestling, like how much of it did you bring over into wrestling?
I feel like I brought a good amount. Only thing that actually I feel held me back in wrestling, well, not held me back, was adjustment period, was the pace and aggressiveness of like we would go into the practice room and we would have 20-30 minute rounds of going live sparring in jiu-jitsu. But wrestling, if you're doing a 30-minute round of wrestling, you're gonna pass out. Like I do a 6-minute round, a 6-minute match in wrestling, and you get 2 breaks in the middle of the matches, and it's just a pace where you're always on your feet, you're always grappling, pushing each other. Even if you get a takedown, they're doing everything they can to stand up, and you're doing everything they can to keep them down. Or in jiu-jitsu, sometimes you'll be able to get those breaks of a closed guard or half guard, or you catch them and out. Sometimes there's things like that. In wrestling, that's how it can cost you a match. So those are things like keeping the pace up was one thing I had to think of, because I was more of a slower, because I wasn't that fast. So I was slower, methodical player of making sure I have the proper grips and being able to not allow my opponent to move, compared to wrestling where there are no grips. You can get so like they're always moving. But again, like I said last time, it's being comfortable on my back. I mean, I'm not sure how familiar you are with wrestling as a whole, but like I would be doing like a lot of like counter attacking and things like that, and like going for funk rolls. And so even though I wasn't the aggressor, like my counter wrestling came well because I could swoop underneath or like roll over my back to try and to avoid or counteract a takedown. And then my top game of trying to pin people was very well, because I would do something called throwing boots or riding legs, which is pretty much essentially back take in jiu-jitsu. And but instead of them being on the butt trying to choke them out, you flatten them out and then you turn them over. But I was just very good at like sticking on to people, because I was so used to jiu-jitsu of trying to get that seatbelt grip and hold on to a back take, get that 4 points. So that was something that felt very comfortable to me in that situation. That was always my best part about wrestling, was me being on top and being able to turn kids and get back points or pin them. So that was something that really helped me in the long run from jiu-jitsu to wrestling.
And going back to jiu-jitsu, what did you bring from wrestling, to transition over that really helped you out?
Honestly, a pretty similar answer. The pace helps a lot to grapple in a jiu-jitsu standpoint at a wrestler's pace is something that not a lot of jiu-jitsu competitors or just people in general are used to, because it's a lot of more slow, methodical, moving that fast pace, which is the case for some people. There are very, very fast jiu-jitsu competitors, don't get me wrong. But and then just like guard passing in general, I felt more it's like sturdy, and like I think it helped my balance a lot. And things are just like there's a lot of similar positions that you don't really think about as jiu-jitsu and wrestling as a whole, that like if you take a different approach, it's gonna throw them off. So like if someone's in like turtle guard or something like that, that is a very similar position to referee's position in wrestling. And meanwhile, it might take me longer to get the hooks in, but like I'm pretty confident, like I'm holding them down and they're not going anywhere. Things like that. Like, and also that's another thing, holding people down as well. Like if I pass a guard, a lot better, like because you're used to wrestling to try and force both their shoulders flat to the mat to get the pin, and you come up with certain little tips and tricks of lifting the head up and walking their shoulders up. So things like that, like just little things and like micro details, especially, really helped in wrestling. And there's some things that honestly just kept me confident as a whole. Like when people would do sit up guard and like sit up around my leg, I was like, you can go for the single leg. That's fine. I'm used to defending single leg, things like that. And like again, back to neutral is if they wanted to stand up, that was perfectly fine. I would stand up. So even though I definitely think my guard and my technique as a whole lost, like it's definitely rusty now and needs lots and lots of drilling to get back to the point it was. It's a fact of if someone backs away from my guard, I can just stand up and then I'm back where I want to be. Because if they pull, that's fine. I'm still feeling comfortable passing, just my movement in general.
And just again thinking about that, I'm always curious about that, transition between the two, because jiu-jitsu and wrestling, they're cousins to each other.
Yeah.
But they're so, so because again in jiu-jitsu, you can attack from your back. You're comfortable there. Whereas wrestling, you don't want to be on your back. That's the last place you want to be. You even see that when, you'll get a new guy come in. He's a wrestler. It's like, oh, okay, you're a wrestler. Have you ever done jiu-jitsu before? No. And, there's the freak out of, being on their back. So I'm always curious, just kind of, especially with you being champion on both stages, state champion in wrestling and then, Pan's champion in jiu-jitsu. It's like, okay, so this is, high level, you would have, if anyone's got kind of an explanation, it would be yourself. So
yeah, and also, I mean, when I was doing both kind of like at a similar time, like I would still actively do jiu-jitsu while wrestling. I didn't have a problem flipping that switch of, okay, I can be in my back and when I can't. But my most recent time back in the gym, like I said, I took a 3-year break to wrestle. The first time someone went to go for a guard pass, instead of me shrimping or inverting to get back and try and get back to my guard, I turned away. And that was a habit of like, oh, I'm on my back. And so like that happened once and I was like, okay, snap out of it. I'm gonna gi right now. I can be in my back, but every once in a while I'll get a slip up of trying like turning away when they're going for side control and then giving up a possible back take, things like that.
And as you're approaching coming back to jiu-jitsu and still kind of being a student of the game, what things are you looking at now just kind of to get set back into it? What's your approach in your return?
Well, honestly, like I said before, my worries was not being able to go back to the full capacity I was, especially at the competition level. And I was talking to some coaches about it, and they pretty much said, like, well, listen, you love the game, you love the sport, the art of it itself. And like I do, I enjoy it. People always ask me, like, oh, are you done jiu-jitsu? And I was like, no, I'm starting to get my black belt one day. Like I'm very set on that goal. And so like as of going right now, I'm going in just to train and better myself and for enjoyment, honestly. And then hoping once I get that rust off and I kind of can find a consistent schedule that works for my work schedule and my jiu-jitsu schedule, being able to hopefully get back in the competitions, because that was one of my favorite aspects of it, was the competitiveness of going out and putting in all this hard work to not show it off, but to get results. So, and plus I've been gone for 3 years and all of my friends that I was training with are now out there winning pans at brown belt and black belt. And I've been talking a lot of smack. So I need to get back in. I need to get some rust off before they beat me up anymore.
And that's, one of those things that I always find fascinating is, when someone leaves for a little bit of time, just whether it be to take a mental break or to go to school or, just switching over to another sport briefly. And then that comeback, it's like, we all love a good comeback story. So it's always fascinating to know, all right, where's the mindset? Where's your head at as you're coming into it? It sounds like, the same old mouth that I know, just, confident kid, determined kid. And I'm happy to hear that. That's good.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just going back because I love it, miss it, and pretty much want to see what the cards lie.
Going back, to your earlier times when we're talking about, competing and just, one loss after the other. And a lot of times we see the same competitors, on that circuit, and those kids that, beat you the first go around, you see them again, like, more so the kid who had you in the rear naked for 3 minutes. You ever cross paths with that kid again?
I never saw him again, but there was like 2 or 3 kids that were pretty high level that were on the East Coast that I would see majority of the year at most big tournaments like Big Nagas and things like that, or any regional IBJJFs. But I mean, honestly, most of the kids that were whooping my ass in tournaments were my teammates, and we'd be the same size. Those kids from Camp Springs and things like that would come down, and they would just we would both go, and we would go work our way up the bracket, and next thing you know, it would just be another training session. But those are my biggest rivals, a lot of them, for like the tournament aspect of it. There was this one kid named Fabian, and him and I went back and forth all the time as like younger kids, like 13, and then I think he quit around 15 or 16 because I never really saw him after that. And then there was one more kid, I can't remember his name now. He trained at Unity Jiu-Jitsu. He was very good, very, very squirrely. I had a very good guard. I ended up having, he beat me once at the American Nationals in Vegas, that IBJJF tournament. And then we actually ended up getting like a super fight at a UGA tournament, the United Grapplers Association. And it was super cool because actually one of the Michale brothers was reffing, so that was cool to see him and all that. But yeah, I went up there and had a super fight against him, and I was able to beat him there. And then we both stopped to wrestle at the same time. So I saw that he was wrestling in New York and I was wrestling here in Maryland. But yeah, those are the only 2 guys that I can think of on the top of my head that I kind of went back and forth with. And then, like I said, my teammates over at Team Wood Urban would just wipe the floor with me when I would get to this, whenever we weighed in the same weight.
So I know, again, early on, taking those losses, you always learned from them and came back stronger. With each win, was there ever a point with winning where you felt like, was there like an arrogance of any sort where it's like, well, I don't need to, I already know this, I don't need to learn anymore? Like, did you have to check yourself at any point in your early development?
Yeah, I would say to an extent. The nice part about it was, it's when I started succeeding the competition level. Like I was winning my brackets regularly. As I think it was around 13 is when I really started to hit my stride of like, okay, like I was going to tournaments and I wasn't worried. I was confident. I was going out there and competing at a high level and training with high level people. I would start bumping up. So when I was 13, I would do the 13 under division, and then I would do the 14, 15 division. Well, I would do the 14, 15, and then the 16 to 17. And then once I hit 15, I started doing adults. So then I had the extra barricade of like they were much stronger than me or older than me and things like that, because puberty's a thing. So a 17-year-old is gonna be stronger, and I was a 13-year-old going against them. So even if I would go and wipe the floor with my division, I would be arrogant. I would go either get humbled in the 17-year-old division, or if I would win that, then I would go back to the gym and get humbled by my teammates. So that was the nice thing about that, is I didn't have too much time with that. Obviously, like I said, I was a teenage boy, so I would get cocky every once in a while. But I always had people in the gym that were light years ahead of me, or at least it felt that way to me. And so that way I could never get too cocky, like, oh, there's no one in this gym that I can, because I would go to practice and there would be world champs all lined up on the mat, things like that. So that was a nice thing about that, is I never had because you don't want to ever be the best in your gym, and like I said, and when you're a close gym, there's no one ever really thinks about that. But that's why I never really had that problem, because I would just get my ass whooped in the room.
I think that would be a problem. It sounds like it would be a problem if you're going through and you're the baddest dude in the gym, and just had a bad attitude about it, but no one can do anything about it. So I think that would be problematic eventually down the road, whether it be in the gym or even out in competitions. So
yeah,
one thing I'd like to know as well, since you were the first grappler I encountered there at the gym, and knowing all these years now later with the maturity that you have and just, the world experience that you have, if there's someone new coming onto the mat, let's say I got a new student starting up tonight, and we want them to step in there with you to kind of, again, just work with them, show them the ropes. What would be a couple pieces of advice you would give someone new just stepping onto the mat, just that's nervous and with no experience?
I would say that there's is to one, just relax, because I remember my first day, it was nerve-wracking. All these people, you're in a weird uniform in a cloth heavy gi, or you're no gi, and people are up close and touching, and it's very weird for someone outside of the sport. Think about it, there's always like jokes about it and things like that, but once you're in the sport, you don't think about it as weird because it's just natural. So one, just to relax, and two, try and figure out what you want out of it. Is if okay, are you just trying to get in shape, or are you trying to get a hobby? Are you trying to go compete? Are you trying and then once you figure that out, it's kind of a lot easier to not set goals, but to kind of find your role of okay, I'm just trying to get in shape. I'm gonna come 3 times a week. I'm gonna take Jujitsu class or take Muay Thai class, learn the ropes, maybe get a couple belt promotions, or I'm gonna get my black belt eventually. There's we had a coach at the gym. I don't even know if he still was there. Coach Duke or Coach Neal.
Oh, yeah.
He, like I said, I never, as long as I trained, I've never seen him compete, but he was amazing, very technical, and he just loved the sport and loved the train. And I said, he just loved it. And so if you're like, oh, I love jiu-jitsu, I just want to train, then go train. If you want to compete and be like, oh, I want to win a world championship, or I want to be a black belt world champ one day, then that's fine. But you set that goal. So then it's okay, well then you need to train 6 or 7 days a week. So I feel like it's finding your goal or your mindset, and okay, then working around that. So relax. If you're new, then don't even think about that's what my definitely would be, just relax. Just enjoy it, soak it in, ask questions is a big one. Ask questions. Like I said, they called me mouth because I wouldn't stop talking. Half of them were questions. I would always ask. Then sometimes questions that weren't necessary, but I was always asking questions.
It never hurts to ask questions.
Yeah.
And actually, I like that piece of advice there, as far as just trying to figure out what you want to do with it. Because I think I'm at a weird crossroad where I show up, I train, and it's almost kind of like I'm going with the motions now. I was like, why am I training? What is my objective? So thank you. That helped me.
I try to do that. Master Lloyd gave me that advice. And he was like, just relax. And he was like, figure out what you want and then do it. And so if you just if I'm going just as a hobby and I want to get my black belt someday, I can go 2 to 3 times a week and train. And if I miss, it's not a huge deal. And just stay semi-consistent and enjoy myself. If I want to go and compete and go to Pans and Worlds, then I need to get a training schedule and hop on a diet and things. So there's different levels to everything. So yeah, just kind of trying to think about it and figure that out is a nice thing to have.
You were wise beyond your years, my friend.
I tried.
I want to kind of circle back to your podcast. So you say you're going to be upcoming, filming the first episode. So I guess in the beginning right now where you're at, just kind of producing it and getting it set up, you have an idea of, what you want to address as kind of an outline going into the show?
Yeah, honestly, we just want to make people laugh and want to be entertaining. We want something that when people are on their lunch break, they can go turn on. When I'm on lunch breaks, I go and I turn on a podcast and I either watch the YouTube video or I listen to it and just eat my food and I'll get some laughs. And that's something we wanted to have. We both think we're funny, which is, who doesn't think they're funny? But we've always, we used to, as kids, try to videotape and make a YouTube channel. It never really took off because we were 15 and weren't serious about it. But now he's gotten super into the industry and about it, and he's very big into music and sound engineering. And he called me one day, was like, hey, I want to do a podcast. Would you be serious about that? And I was like, 100%. And ever since then, we just been full balls rolling. And we're super excited about it. We want to have we're excited we're going to get some guests on there. We're just going to be a genuine podcast where we're trying to relate to people, be funny, tell jokes, avoid any serious topics, and just have a good time where people can just go and turn off their brain and just laugh.
For your episodes, are you going to be releasing them like weekly or
We
like
will
what's?
be weekly. Yes. We're just starting the recording process now. So we are hoping by the middle of May we'll have our first episode out, and we'll be out on YouTube. Stop Hitting Yourself podcast, name of it, because we're two bickering brothers. So
Now yeah, now I'm thinking back to my younger brothers with that. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. And how long would the episodes be?
I'm hoping about an hour and a half.
Okay. All right. Always find that to be, a safe window of time. That was an issue I've had with some of these episodes where my minimum I try to do at the lowest is 35 minutes. And I try to keep it at that 90-minute mark at the max, but sometimes you get a guess that either, especially when we're talking about fucking comic books and nerd stuff, I'll look, I was like, oh man, we're at 2 hours, 15 minutes. We got to turn this off. They're like, do we though? Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, I know that at least when I'm watching podcasts, usually if I'm watching the same episode, the same person, usually about like an hour and a half, I might start to check out a little bit and like, all right, well, this was funny. And things like that. So I feel it's a good time. And plus, I mean, it's going to be up to a case by case as well, because we are super adamant about it being genuine and authentic, where we don't want to have, we don't have a script or anything we're speaking of. We're not making up jokes and telling them to people. Like, we're not doing a comedy show. We're just talking, and we have like topics we want to talk about or funny things that we might see on the internet that we want to pull up and give our 2 cents on. But we're trying to be as genuine and authentic, because I feel like, one, people appreciate it, and two, that shows our true selves. And I mean, that's all we're trying. We're not even trying to sell anything. We're trying to have fun, and hopefully people enjoy it. But I feel like that's the way to do it. If it's just a job, then it's not really worth doing. But we're loving it. We're having so much fun, and I really hope that people are going to enjoy it.
I think that's the important thing too, is being genuine and you wanting to just have fun. Because I have another show here that we do called Garlington Social Club. We didn't really have a plan. We're just like, it was just 2 friends. We're just sitting there talking shit. I was like, so, hey, you want to do a podcast? Yeah, let's do a podcast. And we sat down, I was like, oh, we don't know what to talk about. But, we would just start randomly having conversations. And I always say that about podcasts. They're just conversations with friends that other people get to listen in on. So I think as long as, like you say, you're being genuine and just, unscripted is, I think, the key too, because I think when you start trying to do things and have a script or a plan or anything like that, and you either fall into one of 2 pockets. You're either upset because something didn't go perfect, or you're too focused on it going perfect that you don't seem authentic. So I agree. I like it.
And it actually, the idea started out is because he goes to San Diego State University, and I'm over here in Maryland, and we grew up next to each other. We were been childhood best friends since about, I think, 6th grade, and so we've always like lived on the same street. We would do everything together, or like have the same friend group. And then, so I mean, usually about once a week we talk for about an hour or 2. I mean, but split up or together. So we're like, hey, instead of just FaceTiming, why don't we just do a podcast? And that's how it turned out. And we both are loving it. So very excited about it.
Well, I'm excited for it. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. It sounds like it's going to have a lot of good energy to it. So definitely, keep me posted on it. I'll for sure, shout it out on here and, post it all over my social media, just because, I always tell everyone to do a podcast, because I think everyone has something to say, something to offer, no matter how you cut it, whether it be, giving your opinion on a social matter, or, giving a breakdown on a sporting event, but someone always has something to say. So it's like, you know what, in a time where people are like, look, there are too many voices. I think sometimes a lot of that weird energy out there in the world, sometimes it just needs to be heard in a constructive manner. And anytime someone says they got a podcast, I'm like, ooh, let me know. I want to hear it,
Yeah.
because I want to know what people say.
That's a nice thing. Like you said earlier, to have the right mindset of, I mean, I don't really care if we have 6 viewers, to the point where, like, I'm here to have fun, and I think people do appreciate that as a whole. And the same thing, I think everyone should do one, or just post vlogs on Instagram or TikTok, whatever their vice is. But because, I mean, even if you think no one's listening, people are probably listening, and even if they aren't, at least you're expressing yourself, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's another key thing too. It's like, you don't know who you're reaching.
Yeah.
You might have an episode where you guys might talk about a very, like, just personal subject that you think, oh, we're just having a conversation and it's just us talking, and you're talking about the loss of a pet or something and how you're coping with it. That might hit somebody in Hawaii or India even.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh wow. So, like, when I looked at the stats on this podcast, I was hitting people in Ireland and India. I was like, what? Get out of here. Nobody listens to it over there. And then my buddies over at Nerd Rage Radio, they're like top 20 in Australia. It's like, okay, that's wild, but all right. So, as long as you're being you and being, genuine, people can connect, and people, like you said, people like that when you're being your authentic self.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Mouth, thank you for doing this, dude. I'm glad you reached out, and I'm glad we're able to, get this done. So thank you.
Hey, thank you for having me, Dante. I 100% appreciate it. I love, like I said, like, I've been now a little newfound to the world, but I love it. Turns out that I still deserve the nickname Mouth, because I can talk for a while. So anytime, man, we'll have to have you over on our podcast sometime as well.
Absolutely. I'm always able to make time, and I'm always able to be free, whatever you need. And definitely, want to have you back on here, especially once you get a couple episodes under your belt. Come on back on. We're going to talk it up, promote it, and have a blast with it. Are there any other shout outs or mentions you want to do besides, the podcast?
Honestly, I mean, since we're here on the podcast, I just want to, like, all my successes for like a lot of reasons, but very little was actually my own. I mean, I had coaches that were setting me up for success. Like, hey, like, they were reaching out to my parents, like, hey, like, I saw Michael's, like, super and, like, into this. Does he want to come in for a private training session? Or I actually have a private lesson today, and I need like a dummy, like, and he can get some drills in, or things like that, or like sending me links. I have teammates that were push me farther, like, and created a good home. My parents did everything they could to make sure I had enough. Like, I had the opportunity to go to Pan Kids in California and New York, and I went all up and down the East Coast competing. So if you're out there competing, training, whatever you're doing, just be grateful for people that are helping you do it, because it's nothing's a solo mission. Everything needs some cooperation.
Absolutely. Thank you for those words. And for all the listeners for the show here, thank you as always. We do appreciate it. Look, we're at episode, this is going to be 103. This is crazy.
That's awesome.
Didn't think we were going to make it this far. So everyone who's been listening, thank you so much. I appreciate the hell out of all of you. If y'all have any questions, concerns, criticisms, reach out to me. You can find me at Off the Mats Podcast on Instagram, or bjj.wiki on Instagram as well. I'm always open. I'm very open-minded to any critiques and criticisms, except for the guy who criticized me at the Human Library last night. Yeah, like I felt like he was coming in. I felt like he was trying to rattle my cage on purpose, and I was biting my tongue. I was like, dude, you don't want to do this right now. Like, I'm hungry. And you're basically saying that what I'm doing as a book is stupid. So, but that's okay. That's okay. It was a different Dante. Otherwise, I'm always very open-minded and accepting of any concerns, criticism, or questions. Big shout out to our friends over at Armbar Addict, Eric and Ali. They're still pushing. They're still making big things happen over there. Check them out on Instagram. Check out the website, armbaraddict.com. Check them out on TikTok. Great kids out there in Denver, Colorado, doing big things. So, go give them a look. Also, another big shout out here to my guest, Michael Garlington, in his upcoming podcast, Stop Hitting Yourself. It's going to be on YouTube, so be ready for those episodes and be on the lookout for any promotions on it. And last shout out is to my other show, So You Like Horror. Go check it out. It's about horror movies. It's every other Friday. The most recent episode was based on American Horror Story. And the next upcoming episode is going to be discussing the Paranormal Activity franchise. So be on the lookout for those shows. Every other Friday they come out. But I blast it all over Instagram anyway. So you don't know where to find it. Otherwise, again, thank you so much. You guys keep listening. I'm going to keep making these shows. Bye.
Deep with it. Now let me sing a song.